talk to us a little bit about Burt Young. Of course, the famous Paulie from Rocky. Most people, a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know that he was a boxer under Cus.
Yeah,
So
people
there were
don't
so
know
many
that.
people that passed through the Gramercy. Like people, not, besides Bert Young, people don't realize that Graziano, that Rocky Graziano studied, and fought with Cuss. But Bert Young didn't really get too far, honestly. A couple of Golden Gloves. I think he was able to turn him maybe a couple of pro fights under a few different names. I had Cuss's fight book, and I think Bert fought under like two or three different names.
Wow.
And I don't remember them offhand, but that's why Burt Young always stayed in the boxing world, and that's why he was able to work with Sly and I'm sure get that role because of his knowledge and because of his background. But I can't right now tell you like, well, Burt had a great jab and he had a bad left hand. I wish I could give you those specifics, but I do have Cuss's fight book that was written in the 30s, and Cuss kept immaculate records, Jim. I mean, these records said there were columns that said how much he made, how much the fighter made, where the fight was, what the opponent did well, what his fighter did well, and what happened every round.
Wow.
Wow.
So
You
I
know, it's
know that if
funny.
I had that book, I'd be able to tell you about Floyd's first fight. Yeah, I would, I'd be able to tell you about Burt Young's other names,
That's
Joe
awesome.
Shaw's other names. You mentioned Joey Shaw. So many of those people were in his fight record book that I got from Bob Jackson and Al Gavin, who were two guys that ran the Gramercy after Cuss moved upstate. And those were two amazing guys. And I'll tell you another offshoot of that story is that there was a famous artist who has an apartment building in the lower west side of Manhattan, Julian Schnabel, very famous artist. And Julian Schnabel snuck into the Gramercy gym when it was closed and abandoned, stole the canvas off the ring and had paintings done on these canvas, and they have gone out for millions of dollars. So,
Wow.
so many people have pieces of that Gramercy gym to this day. And again, I don't know, that was just an aside. You made me think of something, but
No, that's awesome.
so many people have got a lick of that Gramercy gym. So many people have been in there to look at fighters. People train there. Graziano, Raging Bull was done partly in there. There was so much, that Gramercy gym produced. I even met people like the CEO of Bennigan's who said, I would not know how to be a CEO of my company if Cus D'Amato didn't train me and teach me the discipline that I know now as a fighter then, I would never be who I am today. And that's a big piece that I wanted to, get off in this interview is that besides the people that we're talking about, Jose, Floyd, Bert, Graziano, Mike, he worked with so many people in so many different lives that are so thankful to him.
It's funny you brought up Burt Young and it popped in my head. Even as a kid during Rocky Five, when Stallone is seeing Mick, he's seeing the apparition of Mick in his head. That entire speech was given by Cuss.
Yep.
The entire speech.
Yep. Yep. I
Yeah.
mean, Cuss was the epitome of the boxing trainer. He not only taught you how to be tough, he taught you how to be sensitive. And at that time, we didn't really understand how that would be important. We didn't understand about learning about your emotions was important. Facing your fears and emotions, we didn't know about that. Cuss really was the first person to shine that light on the other person across that ring feels the same fucking thing you do, kid. It's what you
Yeah.
do with your fear that will change this fight. That's huge stuff. I mean, I think about that almost every day of my life in
Yeah.
different things that
Yeah.
I do. I realize that everybody else you're about to confront has some scaredness. It's not a bad thing to be scared.
And I
Well,
love that quote where he says, I mean, it stuck with me since I was a kid, where he says, I know how you feel about this fight coming up. He says that part, but he said, but I probably wouldn't be around today if it wasn't for watching you and, seeing how good you're going to do. That gives me the motivation to stay alive. And dude, that quote, that's been with me since I was probably 5 years old, you
And
know?
Zach, where that quote came from, Cuss always wanted his Sonny Liston.
Yeah.
Let me just say that, and you got to listen to that. Sonny at one point was the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah.
He was mean, angry, ruthless, and just a bad person. Sorry, Jim. I get really, I feel like cuss when I talk
No,
about shit.
I'm smiling because everything you're saying is Sonny
True.
Liston was
Yeah.
badass.
So
Yeah.
Cuss wanted his Sonny Liston so bad, and he was like this guy up in the Catskills who didn't have a card to play anymore in the field of boxing. Nobody would call him anymore. Hey, what'd you think about the Frazier fight? What'd you think? And then when he found Mike through Bobby Stewart, this was his Sonny Liston. This was finally my mean, bad motherfucker that I can turn him into who I want. And I can impart everything that I know onto him. And that's really, truly became Uncle Mike to
Well,
me.
let's back up. How did Cuss and Bobby Stewart know each other?
They knew each other through the cut man, Matt Baranski.
Now, did Cuss ever work with Bobby on his boxing?
I don't think they actually, like, Cuss was never in his corner, but I think that Cuss did work with him briefly in the gym, but not as his manager or master trainer.
Who was Bobby Stewart's coach?
Again, I know Matt Baranski was the cut man, and I know that they worked out of a gym. I just don't know offhand. Like, if the other guys were here, they'd be able to back me up and tell me who was going on in the Catskills at that time, but I don't know offhand, Jim.
Well, here's an interesting thing because I believe I'm a strong believer in destiny. You have a young kid who's Mike Tyson. He's by the time he's 12, he's arrested 35 times or something like this for all kinds of shenanigans. He's shipped to Tryon for basically dysfunctional kids. And he sees all these kids walking across the park with bloody noses, but they were all happy. And he asks somebody, what's going on? Says, a boxing class there, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. So Bobby Stewart becomes aware that Mike wants to meet him, as you know. And of course, I think Bobby knocks on the door, bangs on the door at like 2 in the morning, says, what do you want to learn, punk? What do you want me for? And Mike's going to become a boxer, but he says, you become a better student and I'll teach you how to box. And
True.
Mike became like a class student. But then of course Bobby realizes I've done what I can do with this kid. This guy's got all the physicalities to be great. I mean, he's 12 years old, 13, he's 190 pounds. He's like, I think his natural bench press was 200 pounds straight off the bat, and clearly he's going to be a heavyweight if he's that weight at 13. And he takes him to Cus. Talk about destiny. That was
Yeah.
meant to It was meant to happen. So take us through Bobby, for the viewers, when Bobby first takes Mike to Catskills. And of course, keep in mind at this point, Teddy Atlas, who was a fighter under Cus, is now running the gym.
So it's, I'm trying to think of the timeline for you. So I would say maybe like 81, something like that, 82,
Well,
about that.
Mike was 13, so it's about 79 or 80, right?
Maybe 80 or 81. I would
Yeah.
say something like that. Bobby says, "Let's go. You're going somewhere else."
But do you know how that unfolded? I mean, was Mike pummeling all the kids in Tryon?
Mike was pummeling Bobby.
In Tryon, yeah, he broke his nose, didn't he?
Yeah. So, I mean, so it was just he started to get overwhelmed for Bobby. I would say that was the impetus, or that was the start of it. And then he was just like, yeah, this kid, if he keeps on growing like this, I can't handle him. And Bobby would come home to his wife all be banged up, and Bobby told me he was just like, my wife was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Get some professionals in there with this kid. Like, do the right thing, you know? While they're eating their dinner in the Catskills. And then that's really, he's like, I'm going to bring him to Cuss. That's who Bobby knew trained so many amazing people. And they literally drove together in a car, in Bobby's car, and drove to the gym first. And they drove to the gym, and from what, I was told, they all laced up. And Bobby said they were only going to go maybe like a round, just so Cuss could see. Mike kept on pushing to go more. He definitely overwhelmed Bobby. And Cuss did see the ferocity in Mike. And he really did capture the essence of Mike's will, so to say, and said if this young kid, and again, I don't think Cuss really knew. So it's not like he was really this prophet of the world. Cuss said that to a lot of people. I hate to break it to you. He saw a lot of people and he knew how to pump the gas and pump you up. So, he said it to a lot of people. I hate to be the bearer to the bad news, but he said that and is like, if this big kid could, do the right thing and keep his mind right and stay out of trouble, he could be the next heavyweight champion. And Cuss really wanted that. He wasn't doing much and he wanted to put the time and effort into it. And he was able to talk to Mike first and realize that this was a kid who I can train and I can kind of mold. And that's really what he wanted. And there were many people he couldn't mold and train, from Ali to Joe Louis, like we talked about, and so many other people. But he realized he can get a good grasp of this kid. And such a grasp that, he adopted him. And, that goes in the future a little bit. But that's really what happened. It was just a drive up to the Catskills. Cuss loved him and said, "This is really my last flame. This is my last hurrah." And nothing I was going to do or anybody around me was going to put water on this flame. Thus, Teddy. And once the falling happened with Teddy, there was no way that Cuss was going to let Teddy win over Mike. And that's why Teddy had to take the walk and Mike had to kind of go on his meteoric rise.
It was a lot more than just a trainer fighter. It was a father son. I mean, Mike loved him. He loved Mike. Mike loved Camille. Camille loved Mike. I mean, they
And
really.
Teddy also. And Mike loved Teddy, and Teddy loved Mike. Don't get that wrong either. They were a family. That's what Cuss instilled in you. Again, let me say that again. That's what Cuss instilled in you is family, tightness, togetherness. We sit at the dinner table. We talk shit together. Very old school that we don't see that anymore.
And you
Can I
had
ask a question real quick? Oh, go ahead, James.
No, go ahead, Zach. I'll ask him a second.
Well, I just had a question real quick because I'd love to get you guys' both opinions on it. I've meant to ask you this before, James, but this is a perfect timing. Do you agree with Teddy's, I guess, thesis on this whole thing that went down in regards to where he will say Mike may have had the belt, but he was never a true tested champion? Have you heard when he had talked like that on his podcast? And he said, anytime he was tested, he failed. Anytime that he was put in the trenches, he failed. And I'm going. Obviously, Teddy knows the game a hell of a lot more than I do, and he knows boxing a hell of a lot more than I do. But I'm going into my mind, and I'm going. But he was tested. I mean, the guy's been tested his entire life with things. I mean, he's been in and out of so much, adversity. It's not even funny. He's been tested. So I just always, you guys are both so you got so much information about this. I'd love to get your perspective on it. I know it's kind of a touchy thing, but I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Jim, you want me to jump in?
Yeah, you go ahead, Doc.
I mean, those are pecks that Teddy is taking to Mike. No matter how you slice it, Teddy is scorned, and he will be scorned for life. And I think that as people age, they talk more. As people age, the truth comes out. You could put it in the rinse cycle, but you could put it in the wash, but it all comes out in the rinse, so to say. However you want to say it, I think there's a lot of pecking at Mike because of the fact that he wasn't there for a big chunk of it. But Teddy has a point. And again, I like to always say that people have a point for a reason. We understand his reason, and he has a point. But Mike was the baddest man on the fucking planet for such a long time. He was feared. He got there for a reason. Of course, Mike might have some inner, we all think we're a fake at some point. There's a lot of people that are like, and I hear actors talk about this. I hear professionals talk about this, where there's imposter syndrome. And I
Yes,
hate to say, I feel it sometimes. When I
everybody
think
does.
about going to 4 Olympic Games, 3 Pan Ams, and over 70 World Cups, I'm like, who am I? How did I get there? Like, how did that happen? So I understand all that. But these are pecks Teddy is taking. There's some validity to it. But Mike did his due diligence, trained really hard, got to where he should be in life, and there's a part of Teddy that's scorned. Period.
Yeah. Okay. I love that perspective. I mean, kind of how mine was as well. But at the same time, trying to be respectful to both parties. And, I understand both parties have a lot to bring to the table, but that exactly is kind of how I kind of felt about it a
This
little
is
bit.
this is my perspective on it, and I agree with what you said, Doc. But to say that Mike was only in 5 fights in his life, if I remember it correctly, he
Yep.
said that he was only in
Yeah.
5 fights. I
Yeah.
mean, look at you can't take anything away from Teddy Atlas. He's a commentator, he's a good coach. He comes from the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest coach in boxing, and Cus D'Amato, and an individual you could have taken out of boxing and have him coach a football team or a
Oh,
soccer team.
absolutely.
And with his approach, he would have made them champions. It wasn't exclusive to boxing. Mike Tyson at his peak was the greatest heavyweight of all time. I
Absolutely.
cannot think of a fighter that punched as fast at heavyweight, that punched as fast, punched as often, punched with as much power with either hand. Mike could hit you with either hand and put you asleep. He could hit you 15 times in 4 to 5 seconds. And pretty much out of those 15 punches, 10 are going to hit you. Look at the comeback against when he won the title in March 96 against Frank Bruno. I mean, he threw about 15 punches in less than 5 seconds and probably landed at 8 or 9 of them. There's nobody, in my opinion, you can compare to for his size that it could punch as fast and could punch as hard. People say Frazier. Frazier had one punch. It was a left hook.
Yeah.
That's all he had. Mike could hit you with any punch from any angle with either hand and put you asleep. So Mike at his peak, in my opinion, was the greatest heavyweight. The night he fought Michael Spinks, no heavyweight before or since would beat that Mike Tyson. Or the night he fought Jose Rebalta before he fought Berbick. I think there's many other fights, of course, but they're the ones that stick out. That Mike Tyson would have taken
Unbeatable.
heavyweight out. I believe
Unbeatable.
it's unbeatable. Of course, I'm saying that with knowing that anything can happen. But, like when he fought Lennox Lewis, a peak Mike Tyson would have taken Lennox Lewis out inside 6 rounds. He would have taken him out.
I think so too.
Anyway, okay, next, Doc. We are at, where did the famous statement, a boy comes to me with a spark of interest. I feed the interest, it becomes a flame. Feed the flame, becomes a fire. Feed the fire, becomes a roaring blaze. Where
Jim,
did
you got great questions, man. I really, really appreciate that because the questions really kick up so many stories in my mind. So thank you. So where that came from was Cuss was an author. He wrote an article when he was really, really young that most people don't know about. It was done by the St. Mark's Press, and it was a story about a young boy who comes to a boxing trainer, and the boxing trainer has him stay away from women, teaches him about singular focus, and teaches him how if you want to be a champion, this is the steps you got to follow. The boy did not follow the steps. The boy did not do the right thing, and women and booze stole the fighter away from Cuss. And that was a book he wrote when he was a teenager.
what's the name of that book?
Uh, Give me a sec. 1 second, I'll tell you exactly. This will be post-production on my like little searches.
But it's all good. I think I honestly I like when things like this happen in the middle of a podcast because
Good.
it's
Because it's
real.
real.
You know what I
Right.
mean? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like cutting all that much because I think the realism is what keeps people involved. If you're cutting too much, they're like, well, what did they cut out? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, good
you know,
point. Let me see. St. Mark's Press. Uh,
So St. Mark's Press was what, the publisher?
yeah, yep, yep. And I have it. I have the whole actual thing. I have the whole little manuscript or the little pamphlet that he wrote, but give me 1 second. Let me just see if I have it. Cuss article.
So is that statement, when a boy comes to me with a spark of
It,
interest, I feed the interest, was that born from the failure of this individual in the story.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say the failure, Jim. That would be a little bit of a reach. I would say it just came from the idea of that he likes to take somebody from the beginning and then develop them to the end. And he needs somebody, he needs you to listen to him. And you got to follow his steps. That's really where it came from. Hold on, I think
That's deep psychology.
it really is. And when he would talk to Muhammad Ali, he'd be like, I can't work with him. He would talk to Joe Louis, I can't work with him. I know right away.
He needed somebody with an open slate. He had to have
100%.
somebody that he could pour everything into, because if there was anything that he seemed resistance, it pushed him away.
He needed that. Again, that's the key point. And I'm looking right now, and I don't want to waste time looking, but oh wait, here it's fine. It's called Making Neighborhood Heroes. An Oral History by Cus D'Amato. I found that, I don't know, so many years ago I probably found it in like 2004, 5, 6, 7, something like that.
Making neighborhood history, is that what you said?
Making Neighborhood Heroes.
Huh.
An Oral History by Cus D'Amato.
Now,
So
what was Cuss's deal with a southpaw? Because as we know, one of the gentlemen who will be interviewing soon, Tom Paddy, who you're very close with, Doc, and is just a great human being and understands that system as good as anybody and better than most, and actually lived in the house with Mike and Cuss.
I love me some Tom Paddy. Tom's the man.
Tom's the man. Uh, when Tom worked with one of my students, Jingwan, and Jingwan's a southpaw, Tom had said, Cuss will just change you. He'll convert you from southpaw to orthodox. And Tom actually did that with Jingwan. He used the whole technique Cuss was using, and Jingwan was excelling over 4 or 5 rounds as an orthodox boxer, and he's a southpaw kid. So what was Cuss's issues with the southpaw thing? Why did he want to convert somebody opposed to just say, well, I'll just work you off southpaw?
I think back in the day there was it was like a negativity. It's like you're not doing it right. You know, it's similar to how they say in snowboard, if you go with I think it's the right foot is goofy.
Goofy. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it
Are you
just
talking about a negativity in general or with Cuss?
no, a negativity in general, by being a lefty. I mean, in those days, they would only make desks for students that were righty. So,
Yeah.
like being left, um, I hate to say, cultural differences, physical differences at the time, they would just kick to the curb, you know? So, you would be forced if you were a lefty to right, right lefty, you would be forced to right lefty. But the funny thing was, Cuss was naturally a southpaw.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So, so he wasn't able to truly change, but he forced everybody to change. But he was naturally a southpaw.
With that book you were talking about, what's kind of the premise of that book, Scott?
It's about a fighter that came to me that got stolen by the mob, got stolen by girls, got taken up by the streets, and he could have trained him to be the best champion in the world, but bottom line, the person left him.
Ah, gotcha.
That's it. That's what it was. And that was his life. That was like a
Yeah.
metaphor of his life. It happened with Rocky Graziano, and the mob stole him away. Many fighters, girls stole him away. Many fighters he had, drugs stole him away in the Gramercy gym.
Well,
So
the mob had a deep hold on boxing for a long period of time. I mean, who knows how long? But wouldn't you
since it
say?
started, since the
Yeah,
inception
yeah,
of boxing, the
yeah.
IBC was the International Boxing Commission, and they ran boxing, and they were all mobbed up with names like Frankie Carbo, um, and um, Fat Tony Salerno, and Jim Norris. These were
Yeah.
people that were like that ran the mob, that ran Madison Square Garden, and that were all in cahoots fixing fights. The idea of fixing fights is not bullshit. People are paranoid about it now to this day because it always happened.
Yeah.
There's a real
Yeah.
paranoia
I think
because
it
it's
still
true.
happens. It's possible it happens today.
There are clauses that say
100%.
a good fight clause. I've seen it written, a no hurt clause that nobody
Yeah.
truly gets hurt. Again, those are clauses in $1 million bouts that are truthful.
Like the Paul and Tyson fight? Did that have any clauses?
I don't like to, I didn't see it myself, so I really can't tell you that. But
But it looked like Mike might have been holding back a little bit. I'm not
and it
gonna
looked
lie.
like Mike was also frustrated a little bit.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah.
Mike always used to bite his gloves. That was a thing that's nothing new.
But there
That
was a
that
couple
biting.
times where it looked like he was just, and then he didn't pull the trigger, and I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on, what did I just
I
see?
think Mike would be the honest one to be able to tell you if there was a clause like that,
You think
because I
so?
really didn't read the contract and I can't speak intelligently about exactly what the contract said. Although I've seen other contracts that were both pro and amateur that had, a no hurt clause or
Yeah,
a good I'm a good person clause, but something like that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Good
go, go,
sportsmanship thing.
Yeah, yeah.
so going back to there, let's set the record straight on this one, Doc. There's there's wording out there, language, stories, whatever you want to call it, that Cus's system derived from knife fighting. Let's set it straight because we know that's not true. So let's just take us through that, and who knows where it came from, but let's just set the record straight on that. That it that
So
that
the
is
way the history lines up, Jim and Zach, is that hand-to-hand combat was secondary to sword fighting. So people really didn't initially start, and as I think about it, it must have started with hands, and then people wanted to not fight with hands, and they wanted to put something else to protect their hands.
well. Let
So
let me interject for a second. It's funny you
please,
say that because in Filipino martial arts, they always teach you with the weapon first. They don't teach you empty hand for 5 years, and then they teach you to put the stick and dagger or sword and dagger into your hand, or double stick, or long and short as they refer to it, in your hand first, and they teach you all that. Then they teach you empty hand later, and that's
I
how that. That's
I
how that.
agree with you, and a lot of styles are like that. But just think about it. I'm a caveman, and I got a branch, and that would be it would be my fist and my branch, or a fist and a rock. Um, and then we would have to make weapons. You know what I mean? So, like, if you think about the anthropological um, you know,
Evolution of it.
track, it probably started with just hands. Then we went to a sword for thousands of years, and then knives after that to make them smaller for smaller combat. But a lot of the techniques were when you slash with a sword, that used to be punches, hammer fists in different directions. So I think that there's some legitimacy to sword fighting and hand-to-hand combat. There's some sort of infinite, um, you know, compilation between all of it. But to reach for something to say that Cus's Peekaboo came from sword or knife fighting is just not true.
Now let's back up a little. Use the term there because we know Cus D'Amato never referred to his style as the peekaboo. So
Yeah.
how did that peekaboo? Where did that name come from?
So the Peekaboo actually was a derogatory statement by the press. The guy's name was Teddy Brenner. He was a writer for one of the outfits, and he would just look at, Floyd fighting and would be like, look at this little peekaboo that this guy. So it was a derogatory negative statement. Cuss never used the word peekaboo. So that alone never was derived from Cuss. The peekaboo was originally named by the press guy Teddy Brenner. So that's a fact. So Cuss never liked the name Peekaboo, nor would he talk about it that much. And he never really named his apparatus the Willie. It was called the apparatus.
But Cus did refer to the Willie as the Willie, correct?
Over time, over time.
But he did never refer to his style as the peekaboo. And even
Never.
even to this day, by the people that know, they just say it's the Cus D'Amato style.
Correct. Again, the
Right.
Peekaboo was a derogatory statement by the press. They weren't like praising D'Amato and his protege. They were ridiculing him. Like, look at this little game this guy's playing. He's playing Peekaboo like a little baby. That's really where it came from, Jim. That's the truth, Ruth.
So, Doc, you wrote a book, and it's just a fine piece of work.
Thank
And
you.
it's off the. I can take a look, but what, 720 pages, confusing.
764. But who's counting?
Seven, oh, seven, okay. And confusing the enemy. This is it here.
Yes.
How did
And,
that come about?
and we were lucky enough to enter that in the independent publishers for sports that year, and we actually won. That's why you see that little sticker. We won an award that year for independent publishing in the sports, yeah, in the sports era or arena. And I was kind of proud of that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting that not only could the writing win, but the interest in Cuss was out there. And that's really that's when I realized that I was going to be part of the legacy forever.
So how did this come about, Doc? And when did you start doing this? Because clearly this is not something you write in a week.
Again, I heard of Cuss, I heard of Mike growing up. I told you that whole 80s, 90s era, but once I got to the Olympics and I met Paige, I told her, and that was again 2003, 2004, I told her that this is really what I have. I need to do something with this. And, she had a couple of other projects that she was doing, but we published this in 2013. So from 2003 to 2013, I did all my research. I did all my interviews. I flew all across the country. I spoke to people from the mob. I spoke to people that played the piano, to jockeys, to family members, to boxers, to boxing trainers, to doctors. I really try anybody that was alive at that time that I can talk to about Cuss was great. One of the people that passed away who had a great conversation with was Bert Sugar with the cigar with the
Yeah,
fedora. I
yeah.
mean, he was like, I love Cuss. He was a weird man, and you're on to something, kid. He's like, I remember I met him up in Chappaqua. I remember, I think I sipped some scotch with him at some place, and he was telling me about all of his Muhammad Ali interactions and how much he loved Cuss and how much he really thought that if I kept on going, I would have something special to work with. So he was somebody that kept on just kind of like patting me in the back, kid, like keep it up. You're on to something. You found the lane. But Bert Sugar was somebody that I was really thankful to meet along the way.
Did you
I
have a
think
chance
we
to talk to?
found the guy to write Gene Lopez's book.
I would love
I
to
think
talk to
we found
Gene.
him. I think we found him, James. We've been talking about it.
Possible. Did you bump into Gene Kilroy on your trip, Doc, for this
Many a
book?
times, many a times.
Did you talk to him about this book?
I talked to him about the book. I talked to him about Cuss. I talked to him about Ali. I talked to him about Zaire. I talked to him about hotel parties. And I mean, again, I could talk to you personally and professionally about the life and times of Gene Kilroy. But what an amazing man. And I think the last time we spoke was when we were at the Jake Paul fight in Texas when Mike broke Netflix. When Netflix got, like
Oh
broken.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember really enjoying my time with all those cats up there. It was such a great time. But Gene was there, and everybody crowded around Gene, listening to his old stories, listening to his just one man show. He has like a one man show. He's a great cat.
I hung out with him at the event Mike put on in August, and yeah, I mean he is a walking encyclopedia. I mean he really is. Yeah,
Jim, the difference is those guys lived it. When you live it, you bring a different energy to the conversation. And you remember things like I am now that just come spot to spot. And you like when you listen to one of those guys talk, you just shut up and let them roll.
yeah. Now
When are
that's
they going to make a movie about Cuss? That's my question. When are
it,
they going to do a film?
it
So
just
believe it or not, somebody just optioned my book. It's been the second year they optioned my book. They want to make a 4 or 8 episodic series.
Wow.
Um, we thought that Carl Franklin was going to actually adapt it to a screenplay, but he passed, unfortunately. I don't mean passed away. He passed on doing the project. He thought it was just way too much time, way too much of energy to read.
History.
Yeah, to read. So I think they passed it right now. Paradigm passed it to 101 Studios, and they're actually throwing it around 101 Studios to see. But this is not my forte. I'm learning a lot about how things get adapted, how you adapt it to a screen or an episode.
Screenplay, yeah.
Yeah, and then from that point, you find a production company and then studios. And then, I mean, I'm learning again, I studied medicine and sports medicine and physical therapy. So I'm learning a lot about how this happens. And I realize when these guys say, Scott, you better, you keep it in your pants till about 2028, so to say. This is not happening tomorrow. And
And
there
we know all about that world, don't we,
yeah,
James?
I know you guys do, and I don't. And you could probably
Didn't
teach
they
me, but I
just
know that 101 Studios has it right now. There will be something one day about Cuss, I'm sure of that.
didn't they just make one with Anthony Hopkins playing Cuss?
I've never seen that, and I think
No,
that's
but
just
Did they?
is it just hearsay? I
I
thought
think
they.
so. I think so. In my opinion, right now, Scorsese is not doing it. Jamie Foxx has not done it. There's nothing that's really out there. I think they might have all talked. They've all came together at one point, but I don't know anything legitimate 100% that's out there, so I don't think so. But I would love to see Hopkins playing a cuss.
But
Yeah.
didn't you have did so you aren't you involved in another documentary that's like potentially taking off sometime
No, this
soon?
is what I was talking about. The movie documentary about Cuss was what we were just talking about. But we have another manuscript that we're running right now called The 10 or 12 Commandments of the Peekaboo. And I think really the drive for that, guys, was there are too many people out there that are doing mimicry, like we talked about, that read about it and that are able to really do some of the slip bags, some of the peekaboo well, but they really don't know what Cuss was saying. They don't have the audio tapes that I took and remastered, and I don't think they really understand what the commandments were. And I think Mike was getting a little annoyed. Both Tom, Frankie, Billy were getting annoyed, and I think people just want one repository of the real, genuine Peekaboo style. So we're in the not the possibility. We're actually writing it right now. Um, I think we're almost like a quarter of the way through where we're going to be talking about what the commandments are, where they came from, and why they're important in real life. And then we're going to also touch upon some myths of boxing at the end of each chapter. And that's something that's being produced again because I think those guys are sick and tired of hearing bullshit about the peekaboo, and they want to make sure that their names, that Tyson's name, Patty's name, Minicelli, and Billy's name are on all that. So I think that's where they're heading with that.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, because I do see there's a lot of people out there that kind of jump on the cuss thing. And you look at it, and what I learned from Billy and Tom, and even things from Mike, is like when I see them doing it, it's like that's not what some of the of course his disciples taught me. You know,
Exactly. And I think we'll all appreciate, when you see some of the commandments of the peekaboo, and just to give you a snippet is like move your head after your last punch. Everything off the jab. Never stay in the midline. What fear and fire really meant to Cuss. Things like that. Those are commandments of the peekaboo. And the expounding on each one of those, I think people will really appreciate, guys.
What's the timeline for that, Dr. Scott?
The manuscript, I would say the movie 2028. The manuscript probably next year.
Oh,
20 at
that's
the
awesome.
mid or the end of 2026, and we're going to coordinate that with the website, Confusing the Enemy. So when you get on the Confusing the Enemy website, not only can you purchase the book, not only can you purchase the CDs of hearing Cuss call out the numbers while you train, you'll also get the manuscript with that.
That's awesome.
And
Now,
it's vetted.
now
That's the most important.
you said you had his basically his diary of fights and everything. Have you published that inside of any of these books or parts of it or anything?
No, and I'm really concerned about what to do with a lot of my memorabilia. And I think right now what's in the works is I'm speaking to the people at the Catskill gym, some of the politicians in the Catskill with the help of Tom as well. I think we'll be able to possibly, within 3 to 5 years, make a Cus D'Amato museum at the Catskill gym.
Oh,
And
that would
I'll
be
take
awesome.
this stuff and not only maybe publish it in a book, but loan it with the correct rights to the Catskill gym so people cannot go so far upstate to Canastota to look at the Boxing Hall of Fame, but maybe they could drive an hour and a half or 2 hours out of New York City and go to see the Cus D'Amato Gym and Museum. That's what's in talks right now.
That would be amazing.
That's where the truth of the mindset is right now, guys. Because I don't want to keep this shit in my basement. I should not have more information and Cuss's his last I have his ID, I have his social security card, I have his boxing license. So many things that I have. I should not keep it in my basement. This should be in a museum doing something well. And at one time, Steve Lott was going to take all this stuff. May he rest in peace. But Steve, I was really close with, and Steve was gonna. Well, he already made like a mini boxing Hall of Fame in Vegas, and at one time I was gonna loan him for a certain fee all of this stuff with insurance, but then he passed, unfortunately. So that got pushed aside, and now the new Catskill Museum is something that we're all talking about.
Sounds
And
awesome.
is the museum going to be in Catskills?
Yes, it's going to be on the same floor as the gym, Jim. That's the beauty of it, is right outside of the gym where the Willies were. You'll have a little outside area where, like this past anniversary for Cuss's death, they had like little trays of food out there, but there's nothing. It's like an empty room. And I believe that if we get the right hardware to store medals, Olympic medals, and Cuss's, fight record, and Mike's first glove, and Floyd's first gloves that were, Floyd's first glove was brown. I think that we'll have a good spot to put all that stuff in if we have the right hardware to store it in. Because I
That
don't
is,
want to hear that there was a break-in one day and all
Oh
that
yeah.
shit's gone. Like I need to do the right thing and ensure this stuff properly. And until that's done, we're not going to move to that. But just, to disclose, these are the ideas that we have that will maintain and preserve the legacy of the great Cus D'Amato.
Man, my
absolutely.
dad's gonna love this episode, James.
Yeah,
He's gonna
yeah.
love
Well,
this episode.
I knew if anybody's going to give us a great episode on the history of Cuss is going to be Dr. Scott.
Yeah.
So
And I'll tell you one thing that's on the top of my mind that a lot of people don't know. Cuss was an inventor. And believe it or not, Cuss invented a toilet seat cover.
You're kidding.
And it's patented. And you can Google it, Cus D'Amato toilet seat cover, and see
That's
the
cool.
patent in the 40s. He was an inventor. He was always making things and always,
He's an innovator, man.
correct.
100% innovator.
You got it, Zach. You took
Yep.
the words out of my mouth perfectly. But just to know that, those napkins that you used to grab in a bathroom that you put on top of the seat that one piece falls in, that's loosely based on what Cuss invented.
Wow.
And I
That's
can give you tons of stories. We should do, a part two with specifics of the Peekaboo, some physicality, some more history. But I think there's so much that we can talk about Cuss and about his innovations and how he made such an inroad into America.
well, give us another piece before we go, Doc, because I know we're eating into your time. Give us give us. There's 100 things I could ask you. I think we'll do part two, but just
I'll
from
give you something else. People didn't know that Cuss had a lot of deaf people in his family. So when he was closely working with Everlast, Cuss used to go to Everlast's factories in New York. And he was the first person, because he trained so many deaf people and had deaf people at the Gramercy in his family, he put lights on the buzzer. He was the
wow.
first person to put the red, the green, and the yellow lights on the buzzer. Before that, they only had sound.
Now it's
But his
everywhere.
deaf fighters didn't have the ability to hear that. And this just touches the surface of some other stuff we can talk about how much he really influenced boxing people and fighters.
so
When's
the
the next time you're going to be out in LA, Doc?
I go out to Topanga Canyon once a year with my kids in October. It's been horrible what happened with the fires
Yeah.
and everything in that area. So even though I was there last October, we'll be there next October, and I would love to make a time where I could see you guys.
well,
100.
we'll get you back on a Zoom for part two. We're not waiting for another 10 months, but
We'll
also
do part 3 out there.
yeah, you got to come to my gym here. This is the Cus D'Amato KO Boxing Gym, Los Angeles.
West
We
Coast, baby.
Yeah, we got the Willie here. We teach the Cuss method.
I
So
think you know how much I respect and love what you do, what you've done with William White. W squared we call them, but you've done so much good work, Jim. The people that you know, again, you guys feel like I feel like you guys grew up with me, knowing all the fighters from Billy Blanks and the Budweiser team and the S. Henry Cho tournaments, and I used to fight in the Felt Forum, and you guys just had the LA version of all that. So I feel like we're doing the same thing at the same time, just on different coasts.
And I
Well,
had the Midwest version because I grew up in the Midwest and then
I
moved
love
out
it.
to Chicago area. So
an
That's
interesting story,
that.
but you mentioned the Budweiser team. So you knew Frank Trejo, right? You knew who he was at the very least.
Yes, but again, I didn't know those guys well. They used to come to again when I used to sneak out of my house in Long Island and go to the Beacon, which was like a concert hall, and the Budweiser team, if I'm not mistaken, I would take a train, the E train from Long Island to Queens, from Queens into Manhattan, go to the Beacon, and my parents wouldn't know. They would think I was sleeping over a friend's house, and we used to watch the Budweiser team for like 1750 general admission at the
oh, that's
Beacon.
awesome.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, my first trip to America, my instructor said to Frank Trejo, he said, Frank, can you help my student out for a bit? I mean, he needs a place to stay. It's his first time in America. He doesn't know his way around, blah, blah. Frank said, no problem. So long story short, Frank was living in Pasadena. And as we know, Frank was running the Pasadena Kempo School for many years and was one of Ed Parker's top guys. And so I'm staying with Frank, and that's a whole podcast in itself. But one thing he said to me, the Long Beach Internationals were Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I go to his house on a Sunday night. Monday morning, he knocks on the door. Boom, boom. I open, or I was up or something. He says, "Okay, Jimmy boy," we have breakfast. He says, "Okay." He had a gym in his garage, and he had this heavy bag. He put a set of shackles on me, like literally shackles where you shackle a prisoner.
Yep.
And shackles were a specific length for a stance, a fight stance. And the shackle for your legs and the shackles for your arms allowed you to jab and right cross, but you couldn't extend like this. So everything was designed that you were always here. And keep in mind, it's August, it's Pasadena, it's very, very hot. I come from Ireland, it's more like New York. I'm not used to the heat. And he goes, "Okay, so just work out on the bag a little bit. There's no timer, there's nothing." I thought a little bit's a couple of rounds, right? I don't know what I thought about. I certainly didn't think it was going to be 1 hour hitting the bag with shackles on me. And so I'm hitting in this garage. I'm bam, bam, I'm jabbing, moving, hooking, and everything was designed that your stance couldn't be too wide. You couldn't kick in it now or anything, but this was just boxing. And, it's getting hot. So, I stop for a breather and I hear this on the window. Tack, 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 tack. Well, he's sitting inside on a high chair looking out the kitchen window straight into the garage with a piece of a thin bamboo that he's tapping on the window with. And he shouts out, "Who told you to stop?"
Love it. Love it.
Punching this bag, punching this bag. 1 hour later, I'm sweating. I'm soaked like I just walked out of the shower. And he finally comes out and goes, "It's all good, Jimmy boy." And he takes off the shackles and takes on the legs and the hands and goes, "I was testing your character."
Really?
I love it.
That was my first real experience with Frank Trejo, but I stayed with him for 6 weeks. We had a great time. He was great. He introduced me to people. He introduced me to another Budweiser member, Tommy Chavis. He's
Don't know the name.
he's on the Budweiser team, and so on and so forth. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Jim, I feel like you and I can talk. I mean, because, when I was in my Tang Soo Do days, I would watch Chuck, and, people didn't know much about Tang Soo at those days. And, like watching him against Tony Tulliners and just some of those old bouts in California that they had, and, those Long Beach Internationals. And I mean, those really, that shaped who I am today, and it sounds like it shaped who you are as well.
well, what a lot of people don't know about the Long Beach Internationals is that, it was created by Ed Parker. Everybody knows that it was his baby. But what people that don't pay attention to history don't know is that up until 1964, where Ben Largusa was a Flora Villabreo student in Cali, And at that time, Kali was only taught to law enforcement and family. It wasn't taught to the general public. And there was no curriculum. Ben Largusa curriculumized Flora Villabreo's system. So he made, step one, step two, and so on. So it made sense to people rather than just doing stuff and learning stuff and not having steps in essence. And Ed Parker gave Ben Largusa on the Kempo crest. There's the dividing lines. There's the 12, 3, 6, and 9, and the 2, 4, 8, and 10. Well, they were given to Ed Parker and given by Ben Largusa, who gave him the permission to use them on his crest. So Ed Parker's a very loyal guy, and he gave Ben Largusa one of the many demonstrators center stage to demonstrate Kali at the first internationals in '64, which the other one was Bruce Lee.
Wait, yep.
And a whole host of people. And, after that, it broke out. People wanted to see it. People wanted to know what was this, very flamboyant system with a stick and a short stick, a long and short, or an actual stick and a dagger. And of course, they didn't know what it was, but they knew they wanted to learn it. And that was the growth of that, where it blew up. And of course, gave Bruce Lee a platform. As we know, Ed Parker introduced Bruce Lee to the producers of the Green Hornet, so on and so forth. So that Long Beach Internationals
spawned a lot of people we know.
A lot of people who had tremendous careers, even
trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I remember even Guru Dan telling me, while I have a couple of pictures of me stretching Guru Dan out and working on his back, and I remember him saying that Ed Parker made him be Bruce's liaison. When Bruce was first there, supposedly, he showed him around. He was his chaperone.
Ed Parker told Guru Dan, he said, "There's to give him $100 or whatever."
Yes,
time
yes,
said,
true story.
I got this guy coming down. His name's Bruce Lee. Show him around, drive him around, be a chaperone, basically. And that was the birth of a relationship between Dan Inosanto and Bruce Lee.
I love that. And again, when we think about the game of death, and when you see Inosanto there, and he's so young with his red chucks,
doing the chucks, yeah.
I mean, I could talk. I could talk to you guys forever about this stuff, and all of Bruce's movies, and even I remember one thing we didn't get into, but do you know that Joe Louis was supposed to be Chuck Norris in Return of the Dragon?
I remember hearing something like that. Yes, I can't remember how I heard that before, but yes, I have heard that before.
Okay, what it was this is the story that is known, is that Bruce Lee wanted Joe Louis for Way of the Dragon. And Joe Louis was, I ain't going to lose to a 140-pound guy who never had a real fight. And
he said it a little bit differently, Jim. I don't think he said it as nicely as you just said it.
No, he didn't, but I'm putting it in a professional manner. And that's okay. Bruce was like, that's fine. And he called Chuck Norris. And that spawned Chuck Norris's career.
Yes.
And also Bob Wall told Chuck Norris, because Bob was a student at Chuck, and they also had the karate schools together.
Yep.
And Joe Louis was a partner also. You ain't going to Hong Kong if I ain't going. So Bob Wall turned up in Hong Kong, uninvited, and Bruce says, "Oh, you're here. We'll put you in the movie. We'll figure it out."
Wow.
Bob Wall's in Way of the Dragon.
Amazing. That's a good one. And I'll tell you this one. Bruce had such a fight collection of Western boxing.
Yeah.
And loved Muhammad Ali's fight with Cleveland Williams. Go rewatch that fight. The whole way Bruce's attitude was dancing around, that was a direct relationship to Ali. So what he did in Return of the Dragon was an homage to Ali.
And he used to
didn't he do it in reverse or something like that, so that way he could study it?
He didn't do it in reverse. He mirrored it.
Flipped it. Yeah, flipped the image.
Oh no, he didn't flip the image. He
just
played the image, and he set up mirrors, and he wasn't watching the image. He's doing it in the mirror, but he set it up that they're both, when Ali punches with his right, Bruce is punching with his right.
Yeah.
So literally like they're working side by side, opposed to looking at him, because Ali was orthodox. Bruce Lee fought with his right hand forward.
Yep.
So, he ended up, he set up the mirrors that he was actually doing it in sync, literally side to side, same
Now
side.
And
is
that's a
it?
whole and that's a whole nother story, Jim, how Bruce decided to stand strong side first.
Oh
That
yes,
came from
yes.
fencing. That was a fencing thing.
But,
Well,
yep.
You know,
Bruce studied and practiced fencing
of
early
course. Of
in,
course we do.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Now,
that's
do you think that the Gene LeBell thing where he picked him up and threw him around a little bit? Because the story I've heard is that, they were playing around on set or whatever, and he just said, "Oh," and he just picked him up and then kind of ran around with him. And then Bruce said, "Put me down." He put him down, and that was the end of it. But then,
I
of course, you have the Hollywood version, that Quentin Tarantino did was,
I
yeah,
think 100% Bruce learned the definitive and like how intent and how much grappling was important from Gene LeBell.
yes,
Period. I think that doesn't whether that exactly happened in that way, I don't know. I wasn't really there, but I do know there are many things that I researched that was like Bruce claimed that Gene LeBell had the best grip. If you wanted to learn how to pin somebody, like this guy can smile and choke you in a second.
Well, and Gene would always tell it because I asked him straight up, and Gene would always say, "Yeah, Bruce could take me out whenever he wanted to." But that was Gene just being Gene.
I don't think so.
No, Gene would play around.
well,
But
Yeah,
you're right.
I
Grip strength, that guy could come up to you and put you on the ground with his pinky. I
I
mean, he
know.
really could.
well,
Yeah.
I believe Bruce could have took him out. It's a matter of who took who out first.
Yeah,
And on
yeah,
what day and on what distance and
yeah.
like you just said, if if he gets a hold on you, Gene
Oh,
was like a bear. You know
if
what I
Gene
mean?
got a hold of Bruce, he's turned into, a wad of paper. I mean,
That's
it's
Right.
that's that's all true. But if Bruce finger jabs his eyes out of his head, none of that's going to happen.
it's done. Yeah, see
100%.
that's the whole great debacle, right? I love that whole debate. I
Well,
love it.
it's that whole primal thing of where you have, you have the cobra and you have the mongoose.
Yeah.
I mean, either one of them can win. Now, of course, the mongoose, I think the mongoose usually wins, right? From the videos I've watched. But at any second, neither one of them take each other for granted. And it takes a split second and either one of them's won that fight. So
Yeah.
I believe, would somebody beat somebody and this and that? I think at the end of the day, when it comes to, whether it be Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris or Mike Tyson and Cus D'Amato, I mean, for what everybody's doing, I mean, you've martial artists, you've coaches, you've instructors, you've trainers, you've fighters, you've grapplers who fight, you've boxers who fight. I think the winning and the losing, for the most part,
Doesn't really matter. Yeah.
it matters in the moment because it
You
can,
can learn from.
but you're always learning, and it's the legacy you leave. It's like,
Yes.
like where Cus D'Amato passed away in 1985, but look at his legacy. I mean,
Yeah.
he can train people today with the legacy he left, the philosophy he left. I mean, there's been no boxing coach, in my opinion, in the history of boxing, and very few coaches in the history of just coaching who has left a legacy like Cus D'Amato. I mean, when you, like you said, Doc, when you look in, it's like I was talking with a philosophy professor recently, and Bruce Lee had that famous saying, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. And we were just talking about, like, well, everybody knows on the plane, on the surface, to what absorb means. To what does it mean to absorb something? Everybody knows, like, what that means on the surface, but to go in deep, like, what does that really mean? And when you look at what Cus D'Amato was saying, like, the fear is like fire, that statement, and a boy comes to me with a spark of interest. Like, what does it really mean? I mean, in the context psychologically of how you can make it work for a fighter or a sportsman, but not even that. You can take it out of sports and apply it to life. Like whoever heard anybody say, both fighters have fear, but it's how you deal with fear is what makes the difference. The difference, the hero and the coward, is they both feel the same, but it's what the hero does and the coward doesn't that makes the difference. Doc, shed some light on that.
I think you're saying it right. It was Cus did not just create fighters, he created character in people. And the things you just mentioned and rattled off is not like throw the left, then move your head. It's not about that. that comes later. You have to learn who you are as a person first. Understand your emotions first. Then, and only then, can you project it onto somebody else. And we have to always be aware of the punch that we don't see, because that's the one that'll knock us out.
The one you don't see coming. Isn't that just isn't that
A
isn't that
good place to end.
yeah, it is a good place to end, but
Right.
isn't that just life? Isn't
Because
it the
that can always get us, and that's the beauty of it. Boxing is a metaphor of life.
Yes,
Doc,
100%.
Doc, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to do a part two. We'll coordinate it.
Absolutely.
It
I
was
love it. Love the shirt, man.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Love it.
it was fabulous to have you on, and I look forward to talking to you again soon from
All
both.
right,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much for
me.
coming on, Doc.
I appreciate it, Zach. James, you know how I feel about you. And let's talk more, and I'd love to do it again.
We will absolutely.
Absolutely.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy
See you
your day
guys.
out there.
Bye.
Thank you. See ya.